morning, everybody. My name is Douw from Walt, and I think we're going to start. Everybody seems to have joined, who should have joined. So we've decided to host a topic called Current Business Learnings and Future Business Learnings and Opportunities, just so that we can reflect on what we've learned from COVID, what we've learned in the world, what we've learned in the world of HR, business, and then what are the future opportunities. And I actually am adding some information to a presentation that I hosted, that I was panel part of a week ago, for what was mainly an HR community. And it was interesting to see how people view the world and how the future world is going to be different. So let's get into it. If I can just get the presentation to move. Okay, so my second slide is COVID-19 learnings, and it states so far, because of this disease evolving and the world evolving, I've taken a view of what is the learnings we have so far and what are the potential opportunities also so far. So we will be looking at what are the things that we've learned so far, and probably in 6 months' time we'll add to the learnings that we've got so far. So one of the, I think, key things that we've learned so far is that the idea of a workplace has changed forever. We now have remote employees. We have potentially offices that are surplus overnight. We've got people working from home, from other spaces, work sharing spaces. You've got shared remote environments. You've got hubs. We've got webinars like what we've got today. We've got collaboration that takes place, and it's all digital. So, and one of the key examples that I wanted to quote is a company by the name of Nationwide Insurance, is one of America's largest insurance companies. They've got 32,000 employees, and they've taken a decision that they will now be working from home, and it's permanent. So they have given up, I think in 3 major cities, they've given up very big, large office blocks of offices that they've given up already. So we now also see and that's possible due to a proliferation of e-meeting apps. I think I've counted the other day, there's 6 or 7 apps that you're now able to use. There's Skype, there's Blue Jeans, which is a Verizon product. You've got Teams, you've got Zoom. All of these apps that have exploded simply to enable us to have meetings. We also have, in South Africa, we are following global trends. We are not a little island that we can say, well, we're going to work in a certain way differently. We will follow the global trends. And then it might seem all well, but I question that, but is it? We've got anecdotal evidence that some people are working longer hours. One of my clients, their executives are telling me that they are working until 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock at night. Where they used to work until maybe 6 or 7 at night. We potentially have less flexibility because we previously thought I could take my lunch hour to go and do something, or I could structure my day around my appointments, around my work, but we potentially have now less flexibility because we're stuck in one place with one set of meetings that just run from the one to the next. We also have parenting challenges. We've got our kids at home, and there's homeschooling that needs to be taken place. Single parents are in a lot worse situations than other parents because they've got to manage a career, and they've got to do homeschooling. So all of these things indicate to us that the future or the current reality and something in the future is also very different. So crisis management has also exposed the character of some CEOs and leadership teams. And it stands out for me, some of the work that I've done around restructuring for organizations, that this quote, and I stole it from Michelle Obama, that says, being president doesn't change who you are, it reveals who you are. And she said that of the Trump presidency. But I thought about that could be the same, to be said about leading in turbulent times. We see that this time has exposed those leaders who cared about the employees and those who did not. Some leaders have really engaged their employees on the true state of affairs, and some have kept them in the dark and have managed very differently. We've seen some CEOs and leadership teams that are very proactive, plans to save or restructured their changes to save employment. In other words, they were proactive. They looked at what they could do to try and save employment, and they will be successful. It also exposed that we've seen in some leaders that there's been flawed communication models. They've given all the employees all the bad news via WhatsApps and SMSs, rather than meeting with people in person, if that was possible, or over a Zoom call that you could hear it directly. But some leaders have chosen to use what I would regard as very flawed communication models. Then this crisis also exposed humans for what they are. We are both fatally flawed and opportunistic, but also sacrificially brilliant. The worst we've seen is inflated prices for food and for household goods, PPE corruption that we've seen in South Africa and across the world, and then cold-hearted approaches to business restructuring, where employees are just called in, there's no process being followed, and they're being told to let go. We've also seen this, for example, with domestics, where a lot of people have used this opportunity, households have used that opportunity to get rid of their domestic workers in a callous way. We've also seen the best, though, in this crisis, where people have pulled together to assist each other, caring for the elderly, for the homeless. We've seen examples of Ubuntu where there's been Ubuntu salary sacrifice, where we're all in this together. Let's all sacrifice for the greater good of our organization. The crisis also exposed inefficiencies in businesses. We've seen it in productivity and efficiency, where some employers have been able to do the same or more with less people being contracted. We've also seen the same productivity where a lot of people have done with up to 50% of less of their normal workforce, which revealed some truths about the perceived value of employees. In other words, well, this person is such a great person and they do such a great job for us. But when you actually look at the productivity during COVID, you actually realize that they don't do what you thought that they did for you. We also saw poor cash management principles. A lot of companies have been marginal at best, and this has exposed that they didn't have any savings, that they didn't have any future projected monies that would carry them through the lean times. And this crisis has pushed them over the edge. They are now in deep financial trouble, and they need to try and figure out how do they rescue their business going forward. We've also seen compliance issues. A lot of companies in our business, we've seen it, a lot of employers have had UIF, but have for years not checked the ID details. So in other words, the money has been deducted, and then when they wanted to apply for TERS, we've seen that they were unable to do so because there were some details that were missing. So that's forced employers now to take a deep look at themselves to ensure that they are compliant. We've also seen other organizations that have not been compliant with UIF now looking to claim UIF and can't claim UIF. And our organization specifically had to work really hard to try and help pull some organizations literally out of a rabbit out of the hat to try and rescue them. We've also seen some other compliances where organizations wanted to make restructuring changes and just unilaterally said to employees, we're going to make changes to your salary with the stroke of an email or a memo that went to employees to say, look, we're going to just reduce your salary. One example we all that's well known or maybe not so well known is, for example, a company called Max Steel that sent out a note to all their staff to say, look, we're reducing your salary by 20% and effective this date. NUMSA, who's the union at that organization, decided to embark on a strike. The company then took the strike to the labor court to try and interdict them. and the Labour Court ruled against the company to say that Max Steel, the NUMSA employees were within their rights to strike because the company didn't follow the provisions of the Labour Relations Act, which is Section 189, to do this kind of stuff. So that during this crisis, the point I'm making here is that it's exposed a lot of organizations not compliant, and I can add compliance in terms of occupational health and safety, and that will come out in time to come, which companies are going to be prosecuted for those kind of breaches. So this crisis also exposed to us that risk management, and with that the insurance industry was not adequately prepared for this. And I make them a note that few companies have considered the risk so fundamental and the impact that it would have on their business. If you ask most CEOs and risk compliance managers whether they've ever considered a pandemic as part of their risk for the future, they would have said no. The same goes, for example, for companies years ago that was involved in a tsunami that hit their coast. Japan and those places, they never considered epic disasters like this to be part of their risk management thinking. I think that will change in the future, and we will get to that shortly. The insurance industry also did not consider what constitute business interruption. So they did not factor in global pandemics, and they didn't define also the definitions of what covers you in the event of such a pandemic, what would cover you and what would then constitute or force them to pay out. And that's another subject, as we well know, of court cases that's busy going on. We've also seen that global governments' effectiveness in intervention to curb the global pandemics was at best poor. There were, however, some companies some organizations that have handled the response very, very well. And I'm quoting here from a Time magazine expose that have ranked certain countries that have done exceptionally well in curbing the pandemic and also protecting the economy at the same time. So Taiwan, South Korea, Singapore is listed, and then of course I think it's well known that New Zealand is probably the best example. And I couldn't help it, but in researching this, they've also stated that the New Zealand government have all taken a 20% pay cut. Which is in fact phenomenal and to be applauded because they lead by example. Then also in our own country, the COVID pandemic has shown that in our own government that they finally found some efficiency opportunities. So we've seen that we've got some heroes in terms of the Ministry of Health and some advisors. They all pushed big pharma to racing to get a cure. And we've also seen that we can have efficiency if we put our minds to it. I mean, UIF created a electronic platform, TERS, even with all its fault, that there's a new way of claiming UIF. They've shown that if they put their minds to it, they actually can be effective and can be efficient. Now, I'm not saying TERS is the be all and end all of it, but it shows that if they apply themselves, they actually can be efficient. So for employees, also what we've learned is that for employees, they've lost a sense of belonging and connectedness. They used to be at the office, they had social interaction, there was teamwork, they felt emotionally well, and that's now all changing for them. And we will get to what we should do in the future. For learning and development, there's a fundamental shift. It's not the same as in the past. We used to have classroom training. We used to have some learning with online. And I'm saying that will change completely in the future. There's now new blended methodologies where it's a combination of various ways of doing learning. And I think that online learning in the future will increase a lot. We're also sitting with issues at home. We have our interpersonal relationships. We've got families that work, families that are together, that work together. We are together for longer. I can speak from a personal experience. I share a home office with my wife. And there are occasions where I felt like I am going for a coffee somewhere else because it's just safer for my own sanity because we're about to murder each other. And it's stress-tested partnerships. The divorce rate, they reckon, I've seen an article the other day that they estimated, they said, in fact, this is not anecdotal. There's an organization that helps people online with documentation and templates for divorces, and they've seen a 20% increase already. I've read an article that China and Saudi Arabia already seen an increase of 30% in the divorce rates in those countries. So what are the future opportunities? And again, I'm saying so far because we don't know the full effect of it yet, and we will see things evolve and change into the future. So future workspaces, I think there's an opportunity here, which will mean vastly different concepts. So remote is here to stay, remote working, but in what format? So will we see, for example, a blended approach where we will see some remote work and some office connection? What about office socialization? We want to feel connected to something. I've done some work for an ad agency, which they have given up all their office space in Johannesburg, Cape Town, and in Durban. But now employees are saying, well, what about the Friday social? You know, we used to get together on a Friday for a drink or for some snacks, all that kind of stuff, to review the week, to interact with each other socially. How do we do that now going into the future? So they had to rethink the fact that they've given up their office. So what can they now do to improve on the socialization requirement for the future? That, I think in time we will figure that out. Productivity pressures. Can I do my best work remotely or at home? Some employees feel that they can do their best work at home. I've got pets at home, and every now and then the dogs walk in and they're a distraction. Whereas if you're at work, you are just focusing on what you need to do. So it's not all that well, but some employees, for example, crave the fact that they can go to an office, they have structured thoughts for the day, they can do their work. Again, you know, all the distractions that are at home, and also, do I have the necessary motivation when I actually sit at home? Do I feel like today I'm going to do my best work? When it's in fact easy to just laze under the duvet for a little bit longer and then get up later to do my work. Remote management will also require new skills for organizational leaders and employees. So how do I manage my remote employees into the future? What are the skills that I need to have to manage these people? And then it comes with our home spaces. If we're going to work from home, need to be reimagined. We need to try and figure out what is my workspace and what is my personal space. What are the workplace comforts that I normally have that I should have at home? Teas, place to eat, maybe possibly a place to exercise. Some of the big corporates have got these large gyms, so I can sneak off to during my lunch hour to go and do a bit of gym work, or I go to work early to go and do a bit of gym work. Now I can't do that anymore. How does that affect me? So do we then have a situation where I'm actually going to escape home to be more productive? I've done that before, where even though my home office is very comfortable, I wanted to change the scenery, so I went to a shared workspace not far from my house, ordered my 3 cappuccinos up front, say to them every hour, just bring them. When you see this one is empty, just bring the other one. And I sat there for 3 hours just to get my head away from the home situation and all the pressures that are there, just so that I can do some work. So some of the future opportunities will be that we will see new business models and new products. So we will see a potential reinvention of organizations, products, and services. For example, what we've seen in the clothing industry. They have had to reinvent themselves for PPE, which is an extension of what they potentially do from a safety clothing perspective, but they found a new niche. And maybe that is something that's for the future that will be considered as well, because we won't just do this for now, but maybe we are into a new business line for the next 2-3 years because the business world requires it. It will also see that we will have a new adoption of new business attitudes. So what are the skills that we can unlearn and learn and relearn? Sorry, there was a typo there. Relearn again. Business process outsourcing. I've got a client who are seeing massive growth in the business outsourcing space. Also, the South African exchange rates is making it very attractive, and this is where this organization is also finding themselves in. For Europe and Australasia are looking at South Africa due to the cost of business in South Africa, the labor cost and the relative skill levels that they find in South Africa is hugely advantageous when you do the cost versus revenue models. We will also see I think the rise of augmented workforce, augmented workforce, which means that you will see consultants come in and do work for you for a project and leave your organization. I think that's going to become more and more prevalent. Also, I think what we'll see in the future is some niche businesses. So we see that already that e-commerce is busy exploding. I read an article a week ago on Forbes magazine that Amazon, which is one of the world's largest online retailers, and they're also into different other businesses as well. But there's 3 new companies that are busy starting up and are potentially taking market share away. And in fact, the article in the Forbes magazine stated that rather don't buy Amazon shares anymore, invest in these other 3 startups, because Amazon, they predict, is going to go down at some stage, despite the fact that Jeff Bezos, who's the CEO, is the first $200 billion person in the world. So there are other opportunities for e-commerce. Then we're also going to see, in my view, a WebEx, what I call WebEx, and experiences for social interactions, for sports, for expos, for trade. A friend of mine bought into a business late last year, and this company literally develops online platforms for things like this, like trade shows. So you can log on and it will look like you are visiting a live trade, like you'll be walking through a trade show, opening stall doors, looking at the products. You can actually visualize the products, and they're now building the platform that if you like something in that trade show, you can immediately place your order and e-commerce can take place. I think the travel industry for business versus leisure is there to stay. I was on the call that I was on last week, where we had the Chief People Officer from Comair on the call, and she gave a fascinating talk about what happened at Comair. After 77 years of profit, they're all of a sudden up for sale. And that's all due to COVID. But we also see, I think we're going to probably see a trend in the future where we will travel less for business, because we're now used to doing online meetings, unless you, for example, have a day program that you want to travel up for the whole day and you've got 6 or 7 meetings you want to attend to and you want to do them in person. You might travel for business, but I think we'll probably see travel for leisure. But also what I've seen in some of the literature is that a lot of 3 companies that I've seen last week in the private travel industry, these are the guys who operate private jets, are busy gearing up for more planes. So they reckon that the private jet industry is going to grow by 20%, simply because travelers are nervous to get onto commercial airlines. They feel safer if they travel in smaller groups, and they feel safer by avoiding big airports, smaller commercial airports to their destinations. And that's just all because of social distancing. They don't want to be in crowded spaces. They don't want to be with other people. And I potentially see that that's possibly something that's going to be there for the future. And all these smaller travel companies, private jet companies, are also gearing their pricing to accommodate greater numbers, which will then bring the individual price per seat down. Then what we've seen is that the tech industries have and will have thrived. As businesses wanted better communication and wanted to stay connected to the world, the big tech industries, Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google, have exploded. So I've put it there. This is not so long ago. In the Forbes magazine, again, those 4 companies have had a staggering $205 billion in quarterly sales, and $34 billion in earnings, when the US was growing at a negative -33. So that's just quite amazing how all these applications have done really, really well. And then, the rest of the economy has tanked. E-commerce, the UK's biggest supermarket, is adding 16,000 jobs to cope with the online shopping malls, shopping boom that's coming, because they're predicting that people will not shop the way they are in the future. Then health and well-being, I see a change there as well. We are probably going to try and build the future superhuman, where we're going to look after, try and get vaccines for everything that we think is coming. We are going to look for better food sources, which we are already looking at. We're going to look for alternative food sources. I saw the other day in Woolies, I am a meat eater, but to my horror, I saw a complete vegetable burger patty being sold. And I was like completely like, what has the world come to? But that is what people are aiming for because of the negative connotation to meat. Then I also think we are going to probably see a swing in terms of the outdoors activities versus a confined space like a gym. I don't know that people are necessarily that keen to get back to a gym. I started mountain biking a little while ago, and now I've increased it a little bit more. And I spoke to 2 retailers here in Durban, and they say they can't find any stock. They can't find new bikes. They can't find any bikes to sell because all their stock is accounted for and has been sold out already. And that's simply because people have decided they are probably going to go and exercise more in the outdoors rather than in a defined space that's indoors. Then for organizations, I see in the future that data management will be a key differentiator. So there will be a push to find productivity measurement tools. So how do I know that Mr. Beatty is in fact today at the office, he's doing his work, or he's working remotely, he's in fact doing what he's supposed to be doing? I think that there will be a drive for better ERP systems that ensure that we're all connected some way or another. Learning and development, as we said earlier, will change. We will see remote. We will see online. We will probably see artificial intelligence playing a greater role in the future. How that will play out, we're not yet sure, but there are definitely organizations that deal with that. Then also in terms of family units, there will be different connections. I call it remote love and care. How do we visit and care for our elderly parents, our siblings, our family members? Will artificial intelligence perhaps play a role in the future? Who knows, something. Then I've already covered it, health and well-being, going to the gym versus being outside. I think if I'm a gym owner, I would be a little bit nervous. I've seen some people asking for gyms in some chat groups and that kind of thing, and they are asking for smaller gyms, smaller numbers of people. So I don't think large gyms is possibly in the future thinking of people. Then I think we will probably get into more structured exercise where we are away from each other, and that involves more social distancing. Then holidays, will we see open spaces like camping sites and smaller spaces versus hotels and maybe niche experiences? Potentially hotels where there's large congregation of people together. Will that still be a model for the future? My view is that I don't think so. I think people are going to look at smaller and more individualized packaging for the future. Then a little bit on we are in the human resources space, so a little bit about human resources. I've done some reading in terms of how do they see the future roles of HR, and there's an organization called Cognizant, which is a United States multinational, and they provide services and consulting. And they've had a look at what they see in the future, and they see these big 5 roles, and I'll expand in the following slides that follow it. These big 5 roles as the key roles for for HR in the future. The one is well-being. The second one is organizational trust, creativity, and innovation. They require the HR practitioners to be data literate. And then how do we get humans and machines to partner with each other? So under the well-being section, we'll get job titles like the chief purpose planner or the workplace environmental architect. And then you can see it on the slides that use their expertise in architecture or human-centered design and public health to carry out the company's mandate to create a healthy and nurturing workplace environment. Such big words. Then you have organizational trust. So here they want to see, well, what is all the culture data showing us in terms of bias and inclusivity in the workplace. Then creativity and innovation. They are going to require us to get creative in terms of how do we get our people to work from home. So you'll see that role there. WFH, and it's almost a swear word, but it actually means a work from home coordinator. So who's working from home, who's not working from home, and then VR immersion counselor is virtual reality counselor. In other words, how do we get our people to not be afraid of this virtual reality and this new technology that comes our way? Data literacy, in other words, what does the data show us, and how does this help us to manage the future? Human-machine partnerships, that's coming. So the human-machine teaming manager. So how do we get the guys who do gaming and those kind of applications to make learning and learning and workplace a bit more fun, a bit more interesting, even though the fact that we're not at the workplace. Then there's a big slide here with or a slide with a lot of future roles and some roles that I've never even heard of, something that I haven't imagined. But they're saying, for example, we will have HR data detective in the future. We've already spoken about work from home facilitator. We will have a second act coach. Don't know what that means, but it's something that's interesting. Number 8, the chatbot and human facilitator. In other words, we get these chatbots on websites. How can we help you? How can we assist you? In fact, some of them work actually really well, but you know that those are just people that sit at the end of it that manage the website. Future of work leader, director of well-being. They all sound very interesting. Distraction prevention coach. In other words, how do we make sure that people are focusing on their roles at the workplace? So the future will definitely be very different, and it will certainly be very, very interesting. So that's the end of my presentation. I want to just see if we've got any questions at this stage. I'm just opening the Q&A. If there's any questions, any challenges, saying to me, listen, you've in fact, you don't know what you're talking about. Welcome to engage on that. I'm just quickly going to see if there's anything else from Akila, and if not, then we can end it there. Okay, so there's no chats from anybody. Thank you very much for attending. If there's anything you want to know privately as well, you're welcome to email us. But that will be us for today. Thank you very much for attending.